Management decisions, operational inefficiencies, and failure to counter competition are likely to have caused this monumental loss. The airline is also said to be involved in expensive and non-competitive ticketing, which led to loss of passengers. But the turnaround strategy in place could make all the difference the national carrier needs to overcome this significant burden. With me in studio to take stock of where they are now is Mbuvi Gunze, CEO of Kenya Airways. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Center.
Thank you for having me.
All right, just one or two tweets, and I know we'll get into this a bit later. Macau Castro says to the CEO, why is KQ underperforming? Ethiopia Airlines seems to be performing better. And then finally, we have Alex Kifana saying, please ask the CEO, is it true that the plan for the airline is to collapse and be sold to private buyers? So sort of like different opinions out there. But let's start with, at what point do we expect KQ to even out? At what point do you anticipate Kenya Airways will stand on its feet?
I think the first thing is to say that we've made great progress. If you look at the results we released in March, if you exclude one-off items, we actually broke even at the operating profit level, which is an important thing. We still made a loss, but the operating profit we broke even. At the profit after tax level, there's a lot of items which do with financing, interest cost, hedges, and the exchange rate impact, which had a big impact on us. Today, we are working on three things, and this is part of our turnaround strategy. First, how do we close our profitability gap? And we have a target of over $200 million to the bottom line. The second thing, how do we improve our business model? How do we keep our business model relevant in the context of changing competitive environment?
Right.
And focusing on our competitive advantage. And the third thing is, how do we finance our business in the short term? And this is what we've managed to do. And then how do we keep that sustainably in the long term?
Through to the long term. In terms of being competitive, we'll come to that a bit later. In terms of restructuring, where are you at that point? What do we know about whether it's job cuts, whether top management is also, a lot of people are baying for the blood of top management, saying a lot of the issues came from that. So are we looking at top to bottom job cuts? What's going on there?
I think let's broaden the conversation. In terms of the Operation Pride, which we launched around bringing ourselves back to profitability, we've made a lot of the changes right across the whole organization. And it's not only about labor cuts, job cuts, because job cuts, and we said that rationalization was only about 10% of the total target of what we are doing. We're looking at how to grow our top line, because it's critical. You saw even in a bad year, we still grew our top line. We increased the number of people we are carrying by 5%. We're looking at cost reduction, fuel, and all the other operating costs. And we're also looking at human capital. And we're also looking at cost of fleet. The biggest thing we've done, and which was structural, is we have reduced our excess capacity. And over the last year, we have subleased or sold 7 aircrafts. And the impact to our bottom line now, month on month from the month of July, is 700 million Kenya shillings equivalent, $7 million a month.
Right, so
that's a huge reduction.
That's a substantial injection of money. Where is it needed most? Maybe you've touched on it, but just tell us that again. Where is it needed most?
In terms of the money?
Yes.
So as we reduce our losses, of course, because that's part of increasing revenue, reducing our costs, the operations of the business will improve, we'll generate more cash. We have debts to pay, so we have to reduce the level of debt. We have trade creditors to pay, and that's part of where the cash flow goes in order to improve the operating capital of the business.
And someone alluded to it in a tweet. Look, Kenyans are patriotic. They would love to fly the national carrier as often as they can. But right now they're saying that ticketing prices are just exuberant. They cannot afford it. And we've also talked about competition where other airlines are offering much better rates. What's going on with that?
First of all, let me just thank Kenyans and a lot of Africans for support they give to Kenya Airways. 60% of our business is in Africa. Every day we carry more than 11,000 people successfully. We have grown that, and we are growing the number of people we carry. So actually, a lot of people are actually traveling with us. We're in competition. Nairobi is a very liberal country and the capital city to fly into. So we are fighting tooth and nail for all the different traffic that we have to. So I have to remain competitive. You might be surprised if I tell you that we compete on more than 1,000 routes every day, because we are competing on every possible combination of routes that we have. So we aim to stay competitive. There will be times, for example, during peak seasons where definitely you'll find the pricing might be different from what you expect, but that's part of seasonal adjustment.
Right, but what we want to say to the Kenyan watching this, and they've just heard your answer, but they're still skeptical, and they're saying it's impossible for me to fly with Kenya Airways right now, irrespective of what you're saying and explaining. What would you want to say?
I'll give you an example. A lot of Kenyans travel domestically. In fact, just 2 hours ago, I was having a stakeholder forum with the Kenya Tourism Foundation, which is all the stakeholders in the industry, and we were talking about how to deepen tourism, how to stimulate tourism. If we talk about the statistics, for example, in travel in Kenya, over the last 2 years, the market has grown, partly because of Kenya Airways and Jumbo Jet, more than 20% year on year. As we have encouraged stimulation, as people have traveled, and actually prices in relative terms have actually come down, because remember, most of our costs are actually in dollars.
Yeah. Still not convinced. I'll give you an example. Ethiopian Airlines, for example, they're considered more reliable, they're considered cheaper. And so still, that conviction isn't quite there for the passenger who genuinely wants to support the national carrier.
So I compete with Ethiopia, and I compete with other people depending on the routes that we fly. And remember, product is not just a function of price. It's also ease of getting there. How quickly do I get you there?
Yeah.
Efficiency, the time of day we are traveling, etc. That all goes into the pricing proposition. So it might be true that, for example, say if I take Nairobi to Lagos, of course, because I'm the direct carrier, I might be more expensive than Ethiopian, but it's relative because the routing is totally different. And the customer has choice, and I am also making sure that I'm trying to keep the customer actually flying KQ. So I don't think it's an absolute to say that the Kenyans don't travel with KQ. Actually, a lot of Kenyans do.
Oh, no, they do. They absolutely do, and they would love to do it more. We want to move on to the next question, but just going back to that, so no chance that these prices will come down.
Pricing, by the way, we are constantly reviewing our prices. Actually, we don't have static pricing. The industry is actually that way.
But these concerns have reached you. You've heard people...
In fact, last year, we totally revised our pricing structure to address some of these things. And it's something that is a direct focus. In fact, even today, as part of my commercial review, every day I'm reviewing pricing and looking with the team, where do we need to optimize, where do we have opportunity. It's a continuous balance.
Other concerns like delays, technical hitches, is that also something that you're addressing?
As an airline, my promise to the guest is actually around on-time performance. That's a big indicator within the company, and that's a big focus. We will have delays every so often. We will have issues that do come up, but how we recover, it's actually part of the big proposition that we have from a service point of view, for making sure that our aircrafts are reliable. I know there's a question out there around the safety of our aircrafts. I must assure the Kenyan public and the African traveling public actually that my first responsibility as CEO is the safety of the aircrafts that we fly. So we will not take chances on safety. We're actually very well regulated by the Civil Aviation Authority on such matters.
Let's talk about some of the new routes. I think Guangzhou, China is one of them. Are these yielding any results?
So we've been flying to China actually for 10 years. A new route we are flying today is, for example, Nairobi, Livingstone, Cape Town, which we launched in July, taking opportunity of the fact that Cape Town was probably one of the largest offline destinations into Nairobi. We were in code share with Kulula, and we decided to put in our own capacity there, and it's actually doing pretty well. We're flying, you might be surprised to hear that I tell you that we fly Nairobi, Entebbe, Bangui. And you wonder who is going to Bangui. The UN is based out of Entebbe. We provide a service to them. On Mondays we fly them to Bangui. On Friday we bring them back. So part of the mandate and part of the thing we're trying to do is look for all these niche destinations, consolidating Africa, allowing people to move much easier by providing frequency and destinations to go to across Africa.
Before we talk about you know, the role that KLM is playing in what's happening at Kenya Airways, let's go back to what you talked about, being competitive. Uganda is keen on reviving their national airline. If this is promptly done, wouldn't it set back KQ as well? Would it set back KQ's revival, in your view?
I think everybody must take their own opportunities and look at their own strategic perspectives. I think here in Kenya Airways, we're very fixed on what we are trying to do, trying to provide the best service offering. We've invested significantly in equipment, we've invested in people, and to drive the service in the market. If you talk about Uganda, today we play into Uganda, we carry more than 25% of the traffic out of Uganda. It's significant. So we provide a significant service to Uganda.
All right. Mr. Gunze, I don't want to belabor the point, but just going back once again to perhaps why you're costing as you do. And I had asked you, are some of these concerns reaching you? Are you getting a lot of people feeling like they're losing touch with, and I know you say Kenyans, of course, thousands of Kenyans fly the national carrier, but are there concerns reaching you about how expensive it's becoming, how they would rather fly other airlines, even though you've said competition is competition and everyone has their own views? Is this part of the strategy? Is there something more to it as to why you're pricing the tickets these way?
I think the clear point, and I just re-emphasize, is pricing is an area which is right at the heart of the business. So we don't actually go out there to be uncompetitive. We are constantly looking at our pricing. Revenue management is a big part of it. And so we are reacting, we are responding, we are being proactive in pricing. So just the assurance to the public that we sense and respond on an ongoing basis. Okay,
that's good to know. What role is KLM playing in the revival of Kenya Airways?
There are two parts to KLM. KLM, first of all, is a shareholder in KQ, which is 20 years together with the government of Kenya. And the second part is KLM is also a commercial partner. So we have operations jointly into Europe. Today, when I look at our traffic in and out of Europe and into East Africa, KLM is a good partner in terms of driving the penetration into further into Europe. And we are also a good partner for them in terms of the footprint from Kenya and into the hinterland of East Africa. So it's a win-win partnership that we drive. Today, when I look at the performance over the last year improving as traffic is beginning to come back, tourism is beginning to pick up, business traffic continuously.
You said it's a win-win situation. Some people say that KLM is choking Kenya Airways further with competition. How would you answer that?
I think the important thing is to understand, actually, in the global world of aviation, today it's all about partnership. If you look at transatlantic, there is joint ventures. If you look at Japan into Europe, there's joint ventures. It is a reality in business that you can't go it alone today in aviation. So you always look for the partners that complement you. Today, between ourselves and KLM, we provide 4 flights a day out of Nairobi. If you add Dar es Salaam, if you add Entebbe, Kigali, we provide 6 frequencies a day. So we're giving our guests choice. Those guests could decide to fly through Nairobi, direct to Amsterdam, could fly to Paris, to London, or they could fly through other hubs. And ours is to make sure that we actually give the option. You can fly out of Entebbe, direct into Amsterdam, come back through Nairobi to Entebbe.
Okay. There's also, are you still borrowing money to revive and return Kenya Airways to where it was? What can you tell us about that?
So I guess you're asking about the third element I talked about, looking at our financial structure. Are we in debt? Yes, we are actually in overall debt. We're not borrowing more today. What we are doing is looking at how actually to reduce the overall debt burden of KQ. That's why we are reducing our level of assets. We've sold some, we've subleased others, and it's about reducing the profile. Again, part of the big picture is through our generating new cash flow through the business, the overall debt will come back, will come down. And the third thing is we are working, as we announced in July after we announced our results, on our capital optimization. So through the different partners who support Kenya Airways today, what can we do to generate short-term liquidity? Therefore, what concessions can we get to improve our liquidity position and bring back our overall debt? So, I mean, we've been supported a lot by the banks that lend us money. We've been supported by the creditors who owe us money, by the operating lessors and the finance lessors.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say you are in terms of the turnaround strategy and returning to Kenya Airways to how it previously was? 1 to 10, what would you say?
I would say right in the middle of it.
Okay.
But I mean, the steps, the steps are made. It's a marathon. I keep on saying this, you have to make baby steps to put the base, and then it's begun to move. And it's important to recognize that, a lot of effort has gone in. Some of that is probably invisible, but will become much more visible in time.
All right.
We're making good progress.
Okay. We'll wait to hear more of that. Thank you so much for joining us on Citizen Business Center. Mbuvi Gunze, CEO of Kenya Airways. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.